Welcome everyone to the L7C podcast, Women's Gymnastics Edition. Today we are giving you an update on what's going on in the world of college women gymnastics. With that being said, we have our women gymnastics expert, Miss Sarah Bogan. How are you doing today, ma'am?
Oh, I'm doing well. A little stressed with PhD things wrapping up, but for the most part, I'm very happy to be here.
And how are you balancing all that with the PhD stuff and then your other stuff in your life? Like how's the balance like?
Well, the balance is very much swung in favor of PhD things right now. I'm hoping that'll let up, shortly after I defend. But the nice thing, being the college women's gymnastics contributor for the L7C, that is an important commitment in my life. And luckily, the things I'm required to do this job well is to do things that bring me joy, which is, think about gymnastics, watch gymnastics. There were some really nice meets, really exciting meets on this weekend, televised nationally here in the hotel suite I'm staying in because my apartment caught fire shortly after Thanksgiving. So I've been living in a hotel since then. I've very much been enjoying getting my free ESPN and ESPN2 and ESPNU. So I've been getting to watch a lot more meets than I normally do on a much bigger TV than I normally do. So things are good. So yeah, sitting back and watching, a 90-minute gymnastics meet on TV has been a good source of fuel and joy for me as I'm kind of pushing toward a very stressful thing in my PhD.
So besides with the PhD and lots of the gymnastics stuff, like what other things are you trying to do to relax and decompress?
Huh. What a great question. Not much. I don't know. I've been really into audiobooks lately, and so that's
Okay.
been nice. Like while I'm working out, kind of just pop in an audiobook and hop on the elliptical. Um, and I have a couple good friends who like we have
Yeah.
dinner every once in a while. So that's a good source of grounding for me. But for the most part, I think work-life balance can mean a lot of different things. And it doesn't always mean like 100% balanced all the time. Sometimes it means working really, really hard for a spell and then like really relaxing for a spell. And so I think I'm just in one of those working really hard for a spell times. And
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
I got you. I got you. Well, let's get right into it. It is now March 6th day of recording, so we haven't recorded since January. So in that time frame,
Mhm.
Sarah, there has been a lot going on.
Yes, so much movement. Um, So something we talked a little bit about last time was the switch from team rankings by average score to team rankings by what we call national qualifying score.
Hmm.
And the way you get your national qualifying score is you take your top 6 meets. Um, three of them have to be away meets, so you
Hmm.
can't just have really high home scores propping up your ranking. Of those, you drop the highest score and you average the rest to get your national qualifying score. And so, what the NQS does is it helps um, reward teams that do well at home and away, which we'll talk about a little bit as we get going, talking about some of these top teams. Um, but it also allows maybe some teams that aren't as consistent to kind of push their way up in the rankings. So, for example, UCLA really shot up the rankings when we switched to NQFs
Hmm.
um, because they have been kind of hit or miss this season, but they've had enough hits such that they're high enough in the rankings. Another team that really benefited from this is Utah State. They had some really, my team, my beloved team. They had a couple of really, really rough meets at the beginning of the season. But when we switched to NQS, they shot up from something like 44th to 36th. Um, so NQS is a really different way of ranking the teams. Some people love it, some people hate it. Regardless, we've seen a lot of movement, except at the very top.
I was gonna say, except for the very top, the number one is still the number one. That
It
hasn't
is.
changed. The Oklahoma Sooners are number one overall, and like you said, number one in vault, number one in bars, number one on beam, number two on floor, 198 plus, 7 out of their 10 meets. I mean, when all things fail, they're still here.
They are. I was watching the Oklahoma and Michigan meet on TV over the weekend, and I gotta say the scores do not lie. Like Oklahoma is looking unbeatable. Like their gymnastics is really solid. Their presence, their focus, their stuck landings, they're locked in, and they are clearly really consistent about it. Sometimes we see teams go out and just have like a crazy, amazing meet, and there's just this
Mhm.
intensity about it. They're on, but Oklahoma, they get those scores just on an average day. I mentioned the 198 plus score um, on there because 198 is kind of like what the top teams get. And so just to give you an idea of what in 198 looks like. So there are 4 events, 6 gymnasts go up on every event, you drop the low, so that's 20 scores. So 198 divided by 20 is a 9.9 average for every single routine that goes up. The highest score that Oklahoma got, which is one of the highest team scores in NCAA history, is 198.675. So let's see what that is. 198.675 divided by 20. That's 9.93 for their average. So somewhere between getting a 9.9 and a 9.95 on every single event on average, every single routine they put up. That's really, really strong. I would love to see another team break through because I think that's really exciting. But I don't know who's going to be able to do it this year based on what we're seeing so far. I think it will take Oklahoma to really mess up, and that's not in their genes at all. So it's exciting to see them being really, really dominant. But I think I don't have too much of a hope for an upset of Oklahoma this year. But again, anything can happen in postseason.
Yeah, it's one of those things like where we talked about last podcast with a dominant team like this. It's human error is the only thing that could, which is very possible in all of us because we're all human. There could be a slip here that deducts them some points when it comes to the final four. Down the road, it could be a slip here or another team just going crazy out of their mind good, and that's just enough. Like it's gonna be more of Oklahoma. There's gonna have to be a combination of all of their top stars messing up one
Mm-hmm.
way or another in one event, and then the other teams just having them being Oklahoma. The other teams have to be Oklahoma and have to be perfect for Oklahoma to lose. But besides Oklahoma, I do, and this is going to talk about 2 teams that you got up next here that we're going to talk about. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously, you've watched a lot more in depth gymnastics than I have. But
Mm-hmm.
that Florida LSU meet, I think, was the best meet
Ah.
I've ever seen in my life. Maybe because of the stakes that it came down to the wire and there was one person left and she had to get a specific score or higher for them to
Mm-hmm.
win. And she did
Mm-hmm.
not just get the score. She got a perfect 10 and they basically won on a walk-off routine.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think, I think that's the match of the year just because of those stakes, and like that's one of the best like sporting things I've ever watched.
Yeah, yeah. So to fill in a little bit more of the details there. So this was the LSU Florida meet. LSU was, surging, doing really well. Um,
Hmm.
they started off kind of slow, really put on the gas at the end. Um, but the second to last floor routine of Florida was Peyton Richards, who I think is a senior now.
Yeah.
She injured herself in the middle of her second, I think it was the end of her first pass. She just had to like sit down. She couldn't continue with her routine. Leanne freaking Wong walked on, got a perfect 10, and
Yep.
that's how it ended. So yeah, it was dramatic, and I think in terms of um, covering meets and making the meets really exciting and packaging them well. I think the SEC does a really good job building up storylines and building up those rivalries. The culture of the SEC has done a lot for women's college gymnastics. And then also the ESPN coverage and the SEC
Yes.
network. They've done wonders for the sport of gymnastics. And we have those moments because, the resources around them have packaged them in a way that we can enjoy them really, really effectively.
Yeah, especially like for someone like if a casual person, because it was on Friday night. So if you're not
Hmm.
doing anything Friday night, you're going through ESPN, you're like, oh, Florida versus LSU. Most people know those schools. Obviously, most people who are into any sports know who Olivia Dunn
Hmm.
is.
Yeah.
Um, So it's just like, all right, we'll tune into that. And then, Trinity, like they talked about her and how she's gone, like, and all that stuff, and how she was chasing the perfect 10 thing and all of that. So you're like, oh, I'll watch. And then you see how close it is. So you're like, all right, I'm gonna stay tuned in. And if you stay tuned in, you're like, oh my gosh, they need this score. They're down 0.15. Like, I don't like for someone just casually tuning in, I think that's the perfect thing to get them into watching college women
Hmm.
gymnastics because they're gonna be like, wait, it's this exciting? Like, and this isn't like the Final Four. This isn't all of that. This isn't the tournament. This is just a meet on a Friday night, this competitive, this high stakes. And I'm seeing a walk off, which I've never seen like a walk off like that. So
Hmm.
I think that's the perfect segue to get people to watch it more because it is very exciting when you have two really good teams going at it like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like even just the atmosphere of college women's gymnastics, like
Mhm.
any meet, even at smaller teams tend to be really, really exciting. Like I know I've introduced a lot of people to college gymnastics just in, living here in Logan and taking people with me to home meets for Utah State. Um, I remember I was walking into the arena with a couple friends once who'd never been to college gymnastics meets before, and they asked me like, "Oh, is this like golf? Do we have to be like really quiet and like really respectful of the people performing?" And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. It is the opposite of what you're expecting." So yeah, it's certainly fun to be with people and experience them. Discovering the excitement for the first time for sure.
Both these teams they're really good, both of them.
Yes, that is an understatement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 and 4 in the
Yeah.
country.
Florida and LSU are really, really good. You heard it here first, folks.
But I guess I mean with them, because obviously they're currently in the top four, and another team that you're going to talk about, like California. Let's just say like the season ended today. It'd be Oklahoma, California, LSU, Florida in the Final Four.
Hmm.
For each team, putting you on the spot here, for each team, who would have to really show out for them to stand a chance of dethroning Oklahoma?
Oh, dethroning Oklahoma?
Hmm. Like who would have to have like the star making historic performance to like give them a shot?
Hmm. I I mean, I think any of those three could do it, honestly. I think, and it's hard. So Cal is hard. So I think what it would take to beat Oklahoma, and I think I said this a little bit on our last recording. I have seen teams, I was trying to describe this a little bit earlier with Oklahoma, where like they are that good when just on their average day. But when a team puts a team performance together that is magical, where every single person on that team is having their best routine every time they go up at the same time, when that happens, the energy is amazing, the scores build, magic can happen on the floor. And I have seen this a couple times that I can think of. One is Florida in the regional finals 2 years ago. They put up some kind of really high score, but like you could tell they were locked into each other. They were all locked into their team. Their coach, Jenny Rolland, was in tears at the end of it when she was being interviewed, saying, like, it is amazing what, 20 something people can do when they put their minds together and go at a goal and have put something together like that. And then of course, things didn't uh, go the best for them kind of moving forward in the season. But that regional final performance was something I'll never forget. The second is Cal. I watched Cal at the Pittsburgh Regional last year. They were regional champions, and it was kind of the same thing. Like there were a couple different teams that could have made it out of regionals, and Cal put together such a good team performance. I remember like on beam, they finished on floor. When I saw them going on beam, I could tell it was something special. Where they were all really focused, they were really locked in. One regional finals, going into nationals, and that was incredible. What I haven't seen yet is a team deliver like that, have a magical performance at the Final Four. Usually, Final Four, it's the end of the season, it's the end of a really long Nationals weekend. It's the second time they've competed that weekend. And usually, the performances on finals day aren't tip top, tip top, tip top. But I think if a Cal or an LSU or a Florida could do that, all three of those teams have the experience.
Mhm.
LSU certainly has the big gymnastics, the star power, the heart, the belief. LSU believes that they can win this year, and that's really cool to see. Um, I think I think a magical performance like that is possible, and especially if Oklahoma has some toes out of line. I think it's possible, but it will take a really, really big performance like that.
I mean, with LSU, I saw recently, which it's kind of funny when they actually don't ask her about like her following and all that stuff and actually talk about like the sport thing, like with Dunn. She said she wants to lead them to a national title. She wants a national title. And I've actually never heard her actually like say that. So I was just like, yeah, LSU, they're coming. So
Yeah, for sure. And they have their documentary. They've got the
hmm
star power in the form of Livy Dunn. They had their Cinderella story last year, making it all the way to national finals. Um, they have a healthy team. They have all the star power. They have all the amazing gymnasts. Um, it's cool for me to hear them saying that they want to win because usually they're the kind of team that is there for the experience and is there to show their character. They're there to do the very best they can. They don't often admit to having the goal of winning. And so seeing them say that this year makes me think something's different for them this year.
well,
That said,
I think they all should say it. Like, I think as every of these top teams, you should just come out and like, hey, we respect Oklahoma, but we're sick of it. Like, you just got to admit it. Like, those other coaches are sick of it. They're sick of her. They're
oh,
sick of always losing to her. Like, you just have to just openly, look, we're sick of it. This is our bulletin board. We have Oklahoma in our freaking gym, like a picture of them holding all these titles. Let's go after it.
see the problem with that though, Martin, is that often backfires.
It does, but
it
sometimes
has
it
it has
because
backfired
that
because
can motivate Oklahoma though. You're
when
right.
Oklahoma knows that people are rooting against them, Oklahoma does even better. Like one of the things KJ Kindler does as a coach is she convinces her gymnasts that they are the underdogs.
What
Like
a
there
great
was
coach
somebody,
does.
the gymternet, like gymnastics fans want Oklahoma to lose too, which is like sad because you don't want to root for somebody to lose. But like there was somebody at nationals last year who had a anyone but Oklahoma t-shirt, and KJ like took a picture of that and showed it to her team and was like, people are rooting against you, prove them wrong.
Well, they've become the franchise. Like that happens to every team. Like obviously the NFL when Tom Brady was around, everyone didn't
Mm.
want Tom Brady to win. Same thing with like a Michael Jordan or a LeBron. Or like once you get to the apex, or like Nick Saban when he was in Alabama before he retires, like once you get to the apex, the only people who want you to win are your fans. Everyone, the whole rest of the world does not want you to win. They're sick and tired of it because you have been so dominant where now it's become we need to take them out. And KJ is doing the right thing. I mean, she's doing the right thing as a coach. Like, hey,
She absolutely is.
don't
Mad
rest
respect
because
to her.
everyone wants us out. There's probably some of these officials who are tired of us. So, but we can give them no reason to deny us our greatness. There's one thing that I do want to that I didn't have a chance to put on notes. I do want to gripe about before we get into some other stuff.
Oh, please
So
do.
I was talking about how great that like Florida LSU meet was. One of the best sporting
Mm-hmm.
things I saw on TV in this 2024 and all the sports that I watch, and I watch a lot of sports. I am really mad that if you didn't tell me it was on, I wouldn't have
Mm.
known it was on. And I have 5 billion sport apps on my phone and on my iPad. And I just looked on one of them right now, the main one I use, the score. So I'm sorry, the score calling you out. They don't have like a women's gymnastics ticker. A lot
Wow.
of these apps don't. So I'm like, I feel like that's something if they want to keep promoting the sport, like, hey, I want to follow Oklahoma and I want to follow Ohio State because that's where I'm at. Or I want to follow Utah because that's where you're at. I should be able to favorite their team. So I have, if I'm just hanging out eating dinner, get the alert like, oh, their meet's about to start. Let me tune in. I don't know why that's not on there, so I got a gripe about it.
Yeah, that's really crazy. I think a lot of gymnastics fans, I think like gymnastics does a good job marketing to gymnastics fans,
Hmm.
but they have a lot of work to do in terms of bringing in the sports fans. Because honestly, like I'm a gymnastics fan, so I follow all the teams on social media.
Right.
So I hear about the meet, but it is the teams individually that have historically always had to promote themselves. And, even with the growth of the sport, it's still something that is largely landing on them. So, like, do you know where this Road to Nationals, we were referring to Road to Nationals a lot, but do you know where this Road to Nationals website came from?
It came from one of I think you said it last year, it came from like the fans, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a fan. So
Hmm.
it's now the official NCAA like official website now, but like that was after years of this being unofficial.
Because like right now I am on ESPN, the ESPN app, and I'm seeing all the things that I follow here. And like I typed in gymnastics, did not pop up, but there's women's golf,
Really?
there's women's NCAA softball, women's hockey, women's lacrosse, but the women's baseball classic, World Baseball Classic, but no gymnastics.
Wow, I think I find gymnastics on my ESPN, but ESPN knows me pretty well. Where I can't find gymnastics, which shocks me, is the Peacock app, the NBC app.
Mm,
I always have to go to the search bar to find the gymnastics because there isn't a little icon for gymnastics at all, which is so surprising to me. But yeah, we've come a long way in gymnastics, but has a very, very long time to go. Greg Marsden, fabled coach, longtime coach at University of Utah. His go-to frame or word phrasing is show it to grow it. Like you have to show it and you have to promote it in order for people to get excited. And there's more people willing to be excited than you think.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. And all you do, you just need to make, and it's bad in a way, but when ESPN decides to latch on to one star and push the machine through them, that's what happened. I mean, that's what happened in women's college basketball sense with Caitlin Clark.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like it's bad that you need the machine to promote a really good product that's already a good product, and you
Mm-hmm.
have all these top tier gymnasts, some of the best on the planet, like going at it at these meets, and it's like, why haven't we seen it? Like, I just find it weird that I can't get a reminder on my sports apps that this meet's going on. Like, that's stupid.
It was very stupid.
But I'll probably have more rants on that probably later on in this thing. But a team we
Yeah.
don't want to, before we go to your individual stuff, Kentucky,
Kentucky.
number
Yes.
6 team in the country.
Yeah. But um they are having such an amazing season. So last year they were kind of a surprise kind of surprise qualifiers to nationals. I forget
Mhm.
who they knocked out. Um, I think I recall there being like a top team that didn't deliver, and Kentucky kind of jumped in. But they've been a program on the rise for a while. They're one of the SEC teams that is an SEC team that stays under the radar. They have this amazing star named Raina Worley,
Mhm.
who I think is number 2 in the all around nationally right now. But Kentucky is a team that I've watched a couple times this season, and both times they have impressed me so much. They were actually a team I was worried about earlier in the season because I was afraid that they were peaking too soon because they were just performing so well. Um, but I watched them at Florida versus Kentucky on Sunday, and Florida edged them a little bit, which is a bummer. But they just look really strong. Just not quite as Oklahoma-y as Oklahoma because nobody's that good. But in terms of their landings, like their stuck landings being really consistent and looking really calm, um, and in terms of like their performances and their confidence, I think they could be a spoiler team. Like they could be a team that makes it to the Final Four. It would take their best day. Definitely, it would take other teams messing up, but I think they have it in them to make it to a national final for sure.
Well, let's jump around then before we go to the individual thing. So that's the perfect segue because it is March 6th, 2024, day of recording. I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at obviously the team that I live close to, Ohio State, that they got obviously the Big Ten championship March 23rd. So there's a lot of the conference championships are going on. But more segue on March 6th, right now at 9 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock your time. Who do you got in the final four?
Ooh, who
Because
do I
that is
got
one
in
of the
Final
things
Four?
you had on the thing.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be hard. I knew you were going to ask me, so I just put it on the schedule.
Well, who do you have in
So
the final three besides Oklahoma?
that's a good way to put it. Well, so it's tough. So like I'll give two answers. So like in terms of what I think will happen,
Hmm.
there's like what my brain says and there's what my heart wants to happen. My dream Final Four would be Oklahoma, of course. So my dream Final Four would be Oklahoma, LSU, Cal, Kentucky.
Okay.
I think I would love to see that. I think Cal really deserves it. I would love to see Kentucky break through. They have a couple of seniors. They've worked really hard throughout their 4 years to really elevate the program to where it is now.
Hmm.
And they're just such an underrated team. Like not a lot of people are aware of how good Kentucky is. I mean, I feel bad leaving out Utah and Florida, but you got to make a decision in the Final Four. So in terms of what I think will happen, I do believe Oklahoma and Cal will make it. I think Cal Cal set themselves up really well to make it to the finals and break through to the finals last year, but they had a really tough regional semi or excuse me, national semifinal performance. And so I think they're coming in and they have something to prove. So I think Cal is going to let that vengeance, that desire to redeem themselves will carry them through. I
Okay.
do think LSU has, like, of the top four right now, I think the most likely team to be knocked out is probably LSU. And that it breaks my heart to say that. But they've kind of, the thing that worries me about LSU, like, they have all the talent, they have all the heart. The thing that worries me about LSU is that if you look at their scores, their highest scores are always at home. So I think they have had like four 198 plus scores. All four of them have been at their home meets. And all of their lower scores are at away meets. And so if they're not going to have their home crowd there supporting them, if they don't have their home judges being excited about giving them high scores, I worry about how they would perform, and I think they're vulnerable to being knocked out if they have a rough day. I do think Florida is going to make it to the finals. They've been on the rise. They were one of the teams we talked about, like seeming to underperform early in the season, and that makes sense. They lost Trinity. Kayla DiCello is out for the season, trying to really focus on making that Olympic team. And I thought they would be resting Leanne Mon a lot more than they are, but Leanne's in the all around pretty much every week. So they don't seem to be resting her to help her get ready for the Olympics, which, is a strategy. A Someone on the gym internet I asked, like, oh, isn't Florida going to be like resting Leanne at some point? And then somebody replied and said, nope, Leanne has one speed. She's just one of those workhorses. So Florida, after underperforming kind of at the beginning of the season, having a lot to kind of build off of them, they have kind of uniquely built on their score every single week. So every time they've gone out and had a meet, their team score has gotten higher. And they keep building and building and building. Jenny Rolland, their coach, is pacing them really, really well. They're coming together as a team and figuring things out as a team really well. And I think they are pacing themselves to peak at nationals in a way that I think will allow them to push through and make it to that Final Four. And then that was three. So yeah, what I think will happen most likely is Oklahoma, Cal, Florida, and then like LSU will make it, but I think it'll be tight potentially.
So last year's Final Four had Oklahoma winning,
Yes,
Florida in second place, Utah, and LSU.
yes,
So that was a really good Final Four last year.
yeah, and that's another thing. You shouldn't ever count out Utah because of their legacy and things, but um,
And then the 2002, I don't know why this one is looking weird, but obviously Oklahoma won again
mhm,
in 2002. Florida, Utah, and Auburn that year. SUNY Lee's got them to the Final Four. So,
yes, indeed.
so Oklahoma and Florida, they've in these past couple years that we've been doing this, they've always been in the Final Four. Even the one year back in 2021 where Michigan won, and then Oklahoma, then Utah, and then Florida. So obviously you can't base because different people and all this stuff, but if you look at the pattern, like Oklahoma's always in it,
Hmm.
Utah's always in it. We haven't even talked about Michigan. They're seventh. You don't know. I mean, they've had shit. They're the last team to win the title before Oklahoma's these past couple years. So, like,
Yeah, I mean they've lost a lot of seniors though,
yeah,
and the thing that is holding back Michigan is like they're definitely like, they're super talented. There's something like they were ranked really high on floor. I think they're fifth in the nation on floor. They're really good. Like they do good work, but they've had a lot of adversity. So in addition to losing a lot of really formative seniors for them, graduating a lot of routines, they've also had a lot of injuries. So in their most recent meet against Oklahoma, they actually only put up five gymnasts on floor because um, that was, a strategy to kind of rest people and like keep people healthy. But they've been really struggling with their depth a little bit, and we're seeing that.
and then
So I would love to see Michigan really thrive, Big Ten, but um,
before COVID, the 2019 year, Oklahoma won.
mhm,
LSU was in
mhm,
second. UCLA was there, and Denver was in fourth.
yes,
So, I think Oklahoma and LSU are going to be there just because of these past couple of years, the pedigree of those teams. So that's two for me. I'm gonna go with your home state, Utah. I think Utah's gonna creep in there. I think once it's because that's one of my things too. Like obviously they gotta all qualify, and these teams are gonna qualify. But like once it's that time, and they're like, all right, it's win or go home now mode. Like that pedigree of seniors who have been here before, the people who have been to these Final Fours. I think that's gonna show. So I think Oklahoma, LSU, Utah. Um,
it's hard, isn't it?
well, I feel like someone's just gonna lurk in, but
Yeah, and I
California
think
was not a lurk in. That's not
something
a
that's going to influence it a lot is what the bracket ends up looking like
that
because
is
some
yes.
people, I think some of these teams like a Michigan could break through and Alabama could be
They're
a
sitting there.
spoiler, a
No, yeah.
UCLA even,
Mm-hmm.
like they've got some great gymnasts. There are a lot of teams waiting in the wings ready to play spoiler to prevent some of these top teams from making it to nationals. And so once the bracket comes out, we'll have a lot of fun
Yeah, it'll be
talking through
easier.
some of the more specific scenarios.
I'll pick
But
Michigan just so I could hit all the regions. So like Oklahoma's
okay,
their region, LSU, Utah, Michigan, and that's a
three,
three
four different
six.
conferences,
Yep.
four
Yeah.
different conferences.
I feel
Although,
like you get the most fans when that happens because you got fans from all the different conferences watching.
absolutely. Although it will be interesting to see what happens when the Oklahoma switches to SEC.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's going to really change the dynamics in the SEC. And then seeing, the likes of UCLA joining the Big Ten, I think
Mm-hmm.
that'll be very interesting as well.
Sure.
But
But,
that's a conversation for next season, probably.
mhm. So now circling, I mean, that'll be a summer conversation since we'll be working in the summer doing the Olympics.
Oh, yes.
So now circling back to from the teams now to the individuals. Sarah, what are some of your picks for standout individuals?
Oh my gosh. So gotta say Haley Bryant from LSU. She's a senior. I think she's number one in the all around in the country. Has every quality of an NCAA champion. Um, Raina Worley, I mentioned from Kentucky. Um, the gymnast that has been impressing me coming out of the blue, improving, as a freshman that I've really been impressed by is Anya Pilgrim of Florida. I believe I was looking at the all around rankings before we recorded. I'm fairly certain she is the top ranked freshman in the all around in the entire NCAA. So a little bit about Anya. She's a freshman for Florida. She grew up training in the US. I forget which gym. Like it was one of the big gyms. It was like yeah, I don't remember. Hills Gymnastics, maybe. But anyway, Anya, actually, one of her parents, has citizenship for Barbados. And so she went to the last World Championships to represent Barbados. So she has, every quality of an international gymnast. Um, and as a gymnast for Florida, she has just had an incredible freshman season. She is becoming a staple for them in every lineup. At the Florida Kentucky meet on Sunday that I watched, she actually got her first perfect 10 ever on floor. So it was like the first 10 she had had in her NCAA career. The look on her face was incredible. Her team supported her so much, and that's very well deserved. She's been SEC Freshman of the Week several times throughout the season, and I think she's going to be just a big star at Florida for years to come. And then I got to shout out my girl Selena Harris. Again, she continues to be a standout for UCLA. I am sad to see UCLA struggling a little bit with their depth this year because they are a team that has so much potential. And Selena Harris just is the gold standard for them. She is reliable. She always goes up and does amazing, amazing work. Um, and yeah, I think if she keeps going the direction she's going to be a star in her junior and senior years. So those are kind of my picks. There's so many, so many. Oh, and then also Cal. I always forget about Cal because, frankly, you're talking about, you know, speaking of gymnastics coverage, I think something that Cal and Utah also has going against it and against them is the fact that the Pac-12 just isn't as good at covering their meets and isn't as good at promoting their gymnasts and promoting their athletes as other conferences. And so I haven't had very many opportunities to watch Utah or Cal this season. So I was shocked when I looked at the rankings this morning and I saw they have two all-arounders in the top 10, MJ Frazier and Maya Lazan. Maya was, I think, number one or number two earlier this season, was out with an injury for a while and is now back in the lineups and looking really good. So just another example of how Cal has a lot of potential and should not be overlooked, even if they aren't the teams that are getting all of the airwaves throughout the season.
I wanted to ask real quick too about one of your teams that we've highlighted because of their circumstances and all that. Clemson, how are they doing?
Clemson, I haven't been following Clemson. I'm a bad fan.
Oh no. All the
But they're doing
hype
okay.
and the
So
team and
I know I've been so busy following all these other teams, but Clemson, so they kind of they kind of trade with NC State for being top in the ACC. So the new ACC gymnastics conference is North Carolina, NC State, Clemson, and Pitt. And I believe Clemson and NC State have been kind of trading off the top spot for a while. Clemson was leading for a long time before they took over the NQSs. But Clemson has had kind of highs and lows. They're one of those teams that has been a little bit inconsistent. And so, um, the NQS kind of bumped the Wolfpack above them.
Okay.
But
Okay.
for a first season team, they are just exceeding every expectation, except for mine, because frankly, if you start from a place of poaching, I shouldn't say poaching.
Hey, well,
If you
when you
start
call
from
it
a
a spade's
place,
a spade.
exactly. If you start from a place of like, if you start a new program with a significant portion of a conference championship winning team that qualified to regionals, yeah, I would expect that you're going to be the quality of program that becomes a conference championship winning team that goes on to qualify for regionals,
Hmm.
especially considering they're having all of the big money that Clemson has thrown at them. They have every resource they need to succeed, which is exciting to see. But I like to remind people to take that with a grain of salt because the foundations were built here in Logan, Utah. And I would like to see kind of the not so power 5e, not so big money conferences, the respect that they frankly deserve.
Oh, I hear you. I hear you there. Um, let's talk about some of the people, like the people trying to get to the Olympics. Like what's going on with all these top stars trying to get these
Yeah.
Olympic bids.
Yeah. So something that has been hurting Utah, well, not hurting it, but something that Utah has been struggling with is the absence of Amelie Morgan. She's a senior. I think she's a senior. Yeah, she's a senior now. So Amelie Morgan is a senior from Great Britain. So she's in the process of working toward qualifying for the Olympic team for Great Britain again. And so I think her plan is to be back at Utah, competing with Utah again in time for conference championships. So she's the staple in the beam lineup, definitely a few other lineups as well. And I think Utah's been feeling her absence and will be very happy to have her back.
Mhm.
Another is Emma Malabuyo, who is an incredible gymnast for UCLA. And I think one of the like a few things contributing to the depth issues with UCLA this year is, having these um, Olympic caliber gymnasts missing. So Emma Malabuyo is trying to work on qualifying for World Cups through World Cup circuit for the Philippines. Aaliyah Finnegan of LSU has already qualified to represent the Philippines. She's already gotten her Olympic spot based on her performance at World Championships last year. But Emma Malabuya still has to work toward qualifying and earning that spot. So hopefully she'll get back in time for postseason, but it'll depend on how the qualification circuit is going. Another thing kind of hurting UCLA is the very, very big hole that was left by Jordan Childs when she decided to focus and shift back to focusing on elite and qualifying again. So that's another thing that is contributing to UCLA's relative underperformance. They're still top 10 team, still amazing, but relatively speaking, they're underperforming and not as deep as they're used to being.
And then you also had Trinity having an impressive return to elite gymnastics at the Winter Cup that
Yes.
just concluded.
Trinity Thomas, yes. So our queen, the queen of tens,
In tens.
has decided not to retire yet. So I mean, you watched that meet, that
Yes,
LSU
I
Florida
did.
meet that ended so crazily. Immediately after that, Jenny Rowland and assistant coach Owen Field got on a flight and went to coach Trinity at the Winter Cup, which is the first big qualifying event, elite meet of the year. Um, Trinity, I think she ended up getting fourth. She was tied for first after the first rotation, but she put up a really strong showing. A lot of people weren't quite sure what to expect from Trinity because the the scoring system in elite gymnastics is so different. There's the difficulty score plus the execution score. Trinity has everything you would want in a gymnast with execution. She has all those perfect tens in NCAA for a reason. Her lines
Hmm.
are beautiful. Her execution is beautiful. Um, what people were wondering about was how much difficulty she was going to be able to get back. And she has gotten back into, top form. And she has more difficulty she's planning on adding. So I think we are so lucky already to see so many people going for the Olympic team this year. It's the deepest group of elite gymnasts we've ever had. But having these gymnasts who are just demonstrating that you can have a really long career as an elite gymnast, and Trinity getting to be part of that is really, really exciting. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Trinity again later this season at US Classic and Nationals and hopefully Olympic trials. And I'm so glad that we get to see her be part of this.
Yep, and you're right. She came in fourth.
Yeah, I think it's something like what are like, do you have the
From the
uh,
yeah the women meet.
results? Who are the top four? Or I think it's the top five are all University of Florida affiliates.
Number one was Kayla,
Yeah, so Kayla DiCello is taking the season off, much like Jordan Childs is. Um, but yeah, Kayla DiCello is having just an incredible year.
and then
I think, yeah,
number two
she's
was
really making a case.
Sky Blakely,
Yeah, so Sky Blakely is the sister to Sloane Blakely from Florida, and Sky is also committed to Florida. So she'll be there next year.
and then number three. I don't know if you say this right. Halsey Rivera,
Oh, Hesley. Yay. Yeah.
Hesley.
Hesley.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know Hesley's plans. I actually, fun fact, I sat next to Hesley Rivera's dad at
Wow.
US Classics a few years ago when it was in Salt Lake City. So that was great fun. I don't know Hesley's plans yet. She's just turned senior, so she's probably not thinking about college too much yet. But yeah, so she was third, and then fourth was Trinity.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think like so yeah, three of the top four are Florida Gators.
That's
So
absurd. That's
the
crazy.
past, present, and future of Florida gymnastics is great.
Oh, it's great when you can recruit. I'll tell you that much. I mean, oh, it's great when you can recruit and you can develop, and the
Mm-hmm.
people you're recruiting see the already great people already at your school. So it's like the rich keep on getting richer.
I sure do.
And then obviously, did we talk about Jordan Childs, her injury?
Oh yeah, that was very sad. So we were going to see, oh, we were also going to see Gabby Douglas at Winter Cup, but she got sick with COVID.
Yep.
That was something everyone was very excited about and very heartbroken about.
Yeah.
Um, we were also supposed to see Jordan Childs, but she had a shoulder, she tweaked her shoulder. We don't know quite the extent of the injury or like how where she's at in her recovery, or where that started for her.
Hmm.
But hopefully she'll be able to be healthy and really make a play for the team. But I'm worried about her. I'm worried about her health and uh, her body holding together. And I just, even if she doesn't make the team, I just want to see her gymnastics at this level. So yeah.
And
Oh, and then Suni. We've got to talk about Suni. We saw Suni at Winter Cup. Suni had a really rough meet.
oh yeah, got 30th.
Yeah, so she only did two events. She did bars and
Hmm.
beam. And we talked a little bit last time about her health problems. She
The
has
kidneys.
had the kidney problem. According to her coach, Jess Graba, not to be confused with Jeff Graba, who is the coach of the Auburn team and is Jess Graba's twin brother. It's very confusing. So according to Jess Graba, Suni's kidney issue is in remission, but she's only been back training full time for about 6 weeks. She had a really tough time mentally coming back, just depression wise, and then getting back into form. The big deal. So, what she told the media was that, she was really upset by her performance. She fell off bars twice and then fell off beam. She had been hoping to make it to and be named to a Winter Cup, and have USA Gymnastics send her to Winter Cups that she could get her skill named after her. But the USA Gymnastics decided she just wasn't ready yet based on her performance. But what she told the media was that she was getting used to the nerves of competing feels differently in her body now with, the health related things she's dealing with. Her body reacts differently to stress now. Um, And so that really impacted and like felt really different when she was competing. And so she was glad to get the reps and is hoping to come back stronger. So she's another one I'm really hoping to see kind of push back because she could easily be top in the world, no problem. If she can stay healthy and if she can make the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate when it's not really something you can't control. Like the
Yeah.
kidneys and all that, you can just do the best you can with what medicine can provide right now, and then go from there. I don't. It's obviously it's only March, but I don't want to sit back here in like July talking about man injuries and health issues robbed the United States of potentially seeing the greatest gymnast team this country's ever assembled.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if everyone is healthy and not that, I honestly think this team, whatever they're going to put together, would be like the greatest team they've ever put talent wise. Now it would just be up to them to go win the medals.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to be like, dang, if it wasn't for those injuries, if it wasn't for those
Yeah.
health problems, if it wasn't for this, we just missed out on maybe one of the greatest teams America's ever created.
Yeah. And with the depth that we have, like there's going to be an amazing group of gymnasts that goes to where are we going now? Paris. That goes to
Paris.
Paris regardless. But I think like pedigree wise, if like two Olympic all around champions on a team, like that's unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just two, like even if, best case scenario, we'll have three with Gabby Douglas. That would be like absolutely unheard of.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. And I would love to see everybody be really healthy and be able to put their best into the qualifying process because you don't want someone to stay home based on, like you
Right.
said, just an injury.
Before we end, because that was the last thing, since we're in March and championships are in April, when's the bracket unveiled?
So the bracket will be unveiled right after conference championship weekend.
Okay.
So conference championships are, I think, in 2 weeks now.
Yep.
You were looking at the OSU schedule. So um, after conference championships, that's when the calculations of the national qualifying score are going to be locked in. Once we have those top 36 teams figured out, that's when the selection committee goes into a room and figures out who's going where, and they draw up the bracket for regionals. So it will likely be, it's usually the Monday or the Wednesday after conference championships. And then the teams will have like a week and a half or so to make their travel plans to wherever they're sent.
Well, hear that. That's in a couple of weeks. That means you're going to hear from Sarah in a couple of weeks because once we get the
Absolutely.
official bracket. Sarah, anything else?
That's all.
With that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Again, we're going to be right back with gymnastics in a couple of weeks once the bracket is unveiled. So then we can actually see the bracket and we'll see if our final four picks that we picked on this recording, if we're going to carry them over to the next one when we get the bracket. Make sure you like, rate, comment, subscribe. And with that being said, L7C signing out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.